Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking about 5 films I think should be in the Criterion collection. This is kind of stealing, borrowing, tributing a series of videos done on the channel Daisuke Beppu, who I discovered a few weeks ago. I've talked about him in a few videos. If you haven't seen those and you've not heard of his channel before, I'll leave a link to it in the description down below. If you like Blu-ray collecting, and in particular Criterion Blu-ray collecting, but also like Arrow Video, Indicator, Massive Cinema, the whole works. He's got an incredible collection, and he does these videos where he talks about films he thinks should be in the Criterion collection. And also I do my own version of that. 5 films I think would be great additions to the collection. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Criterion collection, which you probably aren't, but I was speaking to someone yesterday who said he didn't really know much about what the Criterion collection was all about. It is a company in America that release films, mostly classic films, mostly films that are considered widely to be great films, world cinema, experimental films, art films, films from all around the world. And they release them in packages that are kind of worthy of how great those films are, whether it be restoring it, making it look the best it's possibly ever looked, and curating the release with a booklet or a box set or multiple films, or lots of extras, special feature supplements. And they were kind of around way before the days of even DVD, and producing those kinds of special features when the Laserdiscs were around anyway. So, the way I'm going to do this, in my own way I suppose, is considering both the film but also both the potential for the package itself. Not so much the artwork, but how I would envision some of the special features playing out, and how that could make for maybe a better release of the film that already exists elsewhere. So let's just get right into it with my 5 picks. The first one is Through the Olive Trees from 1994. This is an Iranian film directed by Abbas Kiarostami, and I watched this last year, during my Asian cinema season, and I watched a whole bunch of Kiarostami films, and certainly a director not unfamiliar with the Criterion collection itself. His film Close Up is in the collection on Blu-ray, which I need to get at some point. It's a great film. But Through the Olive Trees is one that I don't think even has a high definition release anywhere. I might be wrong on that, but I'm sure I looked into it at some point because I wanted to buy the film, but couldn't find a Blu-ray anywhere. It's about a young actor who is taking part in a film in the Iranian countryside where they're kind of making a film about a true event and kind of capturing what happened to this small area after an earthquake, a real earthquake that happened. And this happened in real life too. And it's very meta in that sense. It's a part of a series of films. And in fact, you could say that this, my kind of, what's the word? Me saying this should be in the Criterion collection, maybe all 3 of those films could be in a box set, I don't know. But I'm focusing mainly on Through the Olive Trees, which is the only one I've seen of those 3 films. And it gets progressively meta as far as I remember from what I read into it. But Through the Olive Trees focuses on this young actor for the most part, and also the director, of making this movie in the countryside. And this young actor, he is in love with the woman who is kind of acting opposite in the film. And he is desperately trying to convince her to be his wife, and that he will give her a great life, and that they'll be happy together, and they'll raise a family, all that kind of stuff. And she's very icy and cold to that. So we see this guy trying to woo this woman while making a film, and it kind of looks at kind of the nitty-gritty aspects of making a film, kind of arranging things, driving people places, they're camping out there in the countryside to kind of make the film. The director dealing with children and extras and people who are kind of trying to see what's going on while the film's being made. So you see the real-life people in the film making a film, how also their real life is still happening while they're making the film. They're playing pretend, but their real life is kind of still there when the cameras aren't rolling. And there's a great kind of sequence where they're doing a scene, and he keeps getting this one little detail wrong, and so they keep repeating it. Okay, do another take, and then finally he gets it, but then something else. So it goes into the process of filmmaking as well, the frustrations of it. And I just thought it was a wonderful film, beautiful film, in fact. I loved the ending. It's done in this one take and has a great shot of the countryside. And I loved how it wrapped up the story without really giving any dialogue, but just by seeing something happen, the action on screen kind of tells you where the kind of the conclusion of the story is with the 2 characters. But I love this film. I'd love to see it in high definition. I'd also like to see maybe some special features of other filmmakers and people in the film industry talking about it. I know it's kind of fairly highly regarded, but isn't really talked about much by anyone. So I'd love to see a Criterion Collection Blu-ray release of this so I could enjoy it in high definition. The second film I'd like to suggest to be, well, again, I say that as if like I'm putting forward a serious submission video to Criterion. It's, hey Criterion, if you're watching. No, but the second film I would say should be in the Criterion Collection is Glasses. This is a Japanese film directed by Naoko Ogigami, and she is fast becoming one of my favorite filmmakers. And I don't think this film is for everyone. I don't even think this film is for many people, in fact. When this film was screened, the director herself issued a sleep warning to the people in the cinema, saying that you're probably likely to fall asleep during this film, but it's okay, that's in the spirit of the movie. It is a film about a woman who comes to a remote island in Japan, to this resort, to have a holiday, to have a break from the hustle and bustle of city life. And she comes to the resort, there's a couple of people there, and they have this very kind of almost like hippie mentality on life, this outlook on life where they greatly value what they call twilighting. Which is, you know, something that isn't really ever explained what they mean by that. And even the main character herself is trying to figure out, what is this twilighting? You know, when the character says, oh, well, you know, it depends if you're good at it or not. And she's thinking, am I good at it? Does it take skill? She's not sure what it means. But to me, what it means is this act of kind of being present in the moment and kind of taking a breather with life. You know, there's just lots of moments in this film where the characters are just sitting on the beach looking at the sea. And, you know, that's about it. I mean, it's very sparse at times. And I think I'm kind of making out to be more sparse than it really is. But it is a film where not much really happens. The only kind of conflict we have is this woman not really enjoying the fact that the people on the resort are very kind of friendly and, hey, come eat with us, and hey, come hang out with us. You know, she wants to be left alone. You know, she's very abrasive to that. And so she slowly warms throughout the film, and she starts to realize the value of what they do there. And it's just an incredible film for me personally, for my own personal tastes. I loved it. My mind keeps going back to it. There's something about it. There's a special quality to this film. It's shot beautifully as well. It's got great acting in it without really feeling like it's great acting. There's a lot of subtlety there. But I would love to see a Criterion release of this. And to be honest, I'd like to see Criterion release all of Ogigami's films, including Close Knit, which is one of my favorite films ever now, I think. But, you know, with a few more viewings of Glasses, you know, I could see this being one of those films that, not one I'd watch all the time, but watching the film felt like taking a vacation itself. And I look forward to talking about it in more depth at a later date, but I'd love to see Criterion release this film or any of her films, to be honest with you, because I think she's such a special and unique filmmaker, and I love her films, and this is the one I think I'd like to see most get the Criterion treatment. And also, there are special features on the Japanese Blu-ray, which is the only way to get it in high definition. I don't know if it has English subtitles. There's a couple of shorts and a making-of documentary, so there's stuff they could port over, and maybe they could interview Ogigami again. You know, she speaks English. She lived in America for many years, so that's the kind of thing I would love to see from Criterion. I don't think this is actually too far out of the realms of possibility, but at the same time, I do think she's a filmmaker I don't really see many people, if at all, talking about, so it might be even too far on the outskirts for Criterion to even consider. I don't know, but this is definitely, for me, one I would have to say I'd love to see in the Criterion Collection. My third pick is The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, directed by Ned Benson. This film came out in 2014, and it is in fact not one film, not two films, but three films. To very briefly explain, the concept of this movie is that it's a two-part piece that tells the same story from different perspectives. So there is number one, and I don't know which one is supposed to come first. I don't think there's really been an official kind of statement on that, but we have The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, him, and The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, her. There's also a third film called The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, them. Them is the kind of the mainstream cut of the movie. Them basically compiles stuff from both of those films and puts it into one, and to me it just feels like a sanitized, watered down version of the original Vision. But Them is kind of the official version. It was the one that was released in cinemas, the one that's on the Blu-ray. Him and Her are kind of officially treated as the kind of just the, bonus features, But to me, that's the original Vision. That's the original special quality of this project. So we have a film about this married couple played by James McAvoy, one of my favorite actors, and Jessica Chastain, one of the best actresses working today. They play a married couple who have been separated by her disappearance. Now, this isn't a film like Gone Girl, where it's some kind of murder thriller or anything like that, but she has disappeared from his life, and it's about them trying to reconnect, about him trying to reconnect. It's about them trying to move on, but at the same time, they can't escape each other. And I don't really want to go into the plot too much more than that, but the first film, I mean, the way I watched it was him first and then her, which worked beautifully because you don't really get to see what happened to her when she first leaves until her perspective. Okay, and it's a film where you never get kind of this exposition where they're like, oh, well, it all stems back to when she did this to me. They don't talk about it, but the feeling that these characters have been through something is always there. Such an emotional film, but it's so delicately done at times. And it features one of my favorite lines, I think, in any film. And I would hate to rob you of the moment of seeing it and hearing it in the context of the story. All I'll say is it's a very poetic line that a character says, where he says, "A shooting star only lasts for a second, but aren't you glad to at least have seen it?" And in the context of the film, it is absolutely heartbreaking, but beautiful at the same time. It's a very special series of films, but what's so great about it is that in both films, him and her, there's a couple of scenes where they're both in it together, and they're shot differently. Okay, the distances between the characters, literally physically on the screen, is different from both of their perspectives. And I forget exactly how it works, but you get the sense that he feels that they're closer to each other than they really are, or that she feels that they're more apart from each other than they really are. And that he cried when they had that discussion, but then from her perspective, he didn't cry. You get to see how people's perspectives mold their experiences of each other. And it's just an incredible film, and I feel really kind of disappointed. I looked up Ned Benson, who wrote and directed these films. He hasn't done anything since, and this was 4 years ago. And I don't know if it's because this just wasn't a success. Because if it is, it's a travesty, because I think it's a fantastic film that deserves far much more attention. I've never heard anyone talking about it, and I would love to see a Criterion Collection release of it with him and her presented on the first disc, have the them cuts just for completion's sake on the second disc, get some interviews with the principal actors, with the director himself, audio commentary even I'd love to hear, and hear Ned Benson's thought process behind the different perspectives, but also just the story itself. Brilliant film, cannot recommend it enough, cannot recommend them enough. Actually, no, I don't recommend them. When I say them, I mean him and her, not the film Them. Very confusing, but yeah, if you do get a chance to see it, because I do believe the regular Blu-ray release has a second disc with him and her on it. Those are the films to watch. Don't watch Them. I mean, it still has the great acting, it still has the great story, but once you've seen the kind of two separate perspective movies, the combined one just doesn't cut it for me. So there we go. That's another one that I would love to see in the Criterion Collection. I think it would definitely be a worthy entry to that collection. The fourth film I would say I would love to see in the Criterion Collection is a film that has had many releases and is probably, I guess, out of all of these, the least likely. Maybe the fifth one is also quite unlikely as well, because it already has kind of big studios with their paw prints all over it, that being Disney. Princess Mononoke from 1997, directed by Hayao Miyazaki, one of my favorite filmmakers. In fact, I'd say that Miyazaki is probably either number 2 or number 3 favorite directors ever. Forget the fact that he directs animation. He's one of the best storytellers I think we've ever seen in film. This is his best movie. It's not my favorite of his films, so I think this would be kind of the best suited one to the collection, at least to start with. But again, this is something that's never going to happen, and I do think the Criterion collection is sorely lacking in animated movies. I think that's one big gaping gap in the Criterion Collection's library is animation, which is such a stunning medium to tell stories with in film, and there's not really that many of them. There's so many more that could be included, and I'm already thinking of films that I could do in videos like this, so I might continue this and do another 5, you know, in a next video. But Princess Mononoke, for me, maybe one of the best animated films ever made. Stunning epic that blends fantasy and kind of myth, and it feels like an Akira Kurosawa film, but done in a very Hayao Miyazaki fantasy-infused way. It has a very deep spiritual story. Yes, there's environmental themes, but there's also spiritual themes, and there's you know, just a lot of rich character stuff going on, and not to mention the fact that it's stunningly beautiful and has some of the most beautiful music you'll ever hear as well by Joe Hisaishi. So for me, Princess Mononoke would be a great film to add into the collection, but the main reason I have to say, to be honest, that I would love to see this enter the Criterion collection would be to have a second disc, to make it a 2-disc set, and the second disc would hold the 6-hour documentary How Princess Mononoke Was Born. This is a Japanese documentary that goes completely in depth into the making of the film. I believe it's about 6 hours long, and it is truly my white whale. I want to see this documentary so badly, but there's no English-friendly way to see it. I think there was a version of it online, and someone had started doing their own fan subtitles, but they've been taken down, and I can't find any. In fact, I contacted someone on Facebook to say, do you still have those subtitles? I never got back from them. So I'd love to see that making of documentary as one of my white whales when it comes to movies, and I consider making of documentaries movies, so I would love to see How Princess Mononoke Was Born, literally, the documentary itself. And that'd be a great reason to kind of to add a huge special feature to the Blu-ray of this film if it were to join the Criterion collection. My 5th and final pick is another recent film from 2013, directed by Denis Villeneuve. It is Prisoners. This is one of the best, I think, thrillers I've ever seen. Just headlined by 3 knockout performances by Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Paul Dano, however you pronounce that. Great actor, but particularly Jake Gyllenhaal, I think it was kind of an Oscar-worthy performance, and this is when I really got tuned into the fact that he's a fantastic actor. But this is such a rich and harrowing story about a child who goes missing. And you see just the toll that it takes on Jake Gyllenhaal's character, the detective, as he's trying to figure this out, but he can't. And he gets so frustrated with this. And then you have Hugh Jackman, who's the father, who is just filled with this intense rage. And how that manifests itself is just breathtaking. You know, this film is incredible. I'd love to see a release of it that has a whole bunch of special features. I want to see lengthy interviews with Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, the director himself, Denis Villeneuve. I want to see all sorts of in-depth stuff on this. I think the regular release on Blu-ray has maybe a couple of featurettes or something like that. I think this is a film worth celebrating, a film worth digging deeper into with special features. I'd love audio commentaries. You know, I just want more special features for this film. That's the main thing. But also, maybe to raise its profile even higher than it is, because I don't think it's talked about enough. I think it's an excellent film, and I'd love to see it in the Criterion collection. And that brings me to a close. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your thoughts down below, what you think about the picks that I've made, what films you'd love to see in the Criterion collection. Again, shout out to Daisuke Beppu for the idea to do this video. I actually enjoyed kind of thinking about this. And again, I'm already thinking in my head of other films that I could kind of propose to be included in the Criterion collection I think would be interesting additions. Anyway, that's it for now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.